I am Daniel Castaneda Mogollon. I go by the pronouns he or him. I am originally from Mexico, from a town called Colima. I'm a PhD candidate. I'm at the beginning of my fourth year. My main thesis or research project is malaria and COVID. We're using amplicon deep sequencing. I am a bioinformatician who applies different software tools to do this. I'm engaged to a Nepali girl who's going to be my wife next year in June. With a really big issue with the mental health in my undergrads. I was 22 and I was undergoing like a rough patch. I think rough sounds nice. It was a terrible patch. It was a nightmare. And mostly because I wasn't sure what was happening to me. And in the end, I was diagnosed with depression. And at the beginning, I didn't want to seek out for help because I thought nobody could actually help me. But then little by little, I started understanding how this can be treated, understood, and how it can be conveyed to other people so they can understand as well. Um, Depression back then wasn't easy, especially in terms of treatment. The first set of treatments wasn't really working until it finally did. And of course, there were other alternatives to manage this, like writing on a diary or expressing my emotions into paper was somehow helping me release all the steam that was accumulating inside because of this nightmare. And in the end, it was an experience that I wouldn't wish on anyone. It was horrible. However, I learned a lot from it and it made me much stronger. In fact, I carry with me ink in here, semicolon tattoo. Oops. Yeah, there you go. As a reminder of how strong I was and how I can overcome these mental issues. After a few years, I was diagnosed with ADHD and it makes complete sense. At the beginning, I was just having a lot of energy, more than a usual person would have. Then I was diagnosed with ADHD. And it's much better to understand it. And now that I know what it is, and much better to try to not to get rid of it, but more like to live with it. And I live with this every day. And instead of seeing it as something bad, I try to canalize this energy into something that has purpose or something that can be productive. So, for example, on my research or on tasks that I can be doing every day, it somehow helps me. So instead of saying that's something bad, I just try to say that's something different that I can take advantage of. I was going both to my therapist and also I was taking medication for my depression back then and my anxiety. Nowadays, one of the big things is that I learned how to identify certain warning signs of when something can get bad. And when I do identify those, instead of letting this warning signs become something else, what I do is I reach out to a current therapist that I have here in Calgary. This therapist, I reach out to her via the Empower Me application that the university has. And this therapist who also speaks Spanish, it's quite amazing. It feels more familiar to be talking in your own native tongue. So I reached out for a therapist, clinical help back then. And nowadays, whenever I identify these signs, I reach out to my therapist. It's understandable if a student who's going through something similar thinks that he or she cannot be helped because this situation is particularly unique to each individual. However, there are professional people who are trained to deal with this and they are trained to understand how to tackle that particular situation for you. So even though a student who's undergoing through a difficult time who thinks that it cannot be helped, they should know that it can be helped. There's something that you can do about it and there are people trained for this. So if the same condition that you could be going through makes you think that you cannot be helped is part of the condition. So just as hard as it can be, try to put your emotions aside and think rationally that this has been dealt in the past by other people and this can actually be helped no matter what situation it is. If a student is undergoing through a crisis right now, just think of it as something that's going to make you stronger in the future, even though that seems to be a long time. I think you're going to overcome this and you're going to be able to not laugh at the past, but learn from it and become stronger with it.